Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to the qualifying watch-along for the 2021 Mexico City Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well on what is a very cold Saturday night in my part of the UK, and I cannot wait to see what happens in this qualifying session. The field looking, except for the very front of the grid, very, very close. Some interesting battles in there. Especially around, McLaren and Alpha Tauri, Alfa Romeo even, who are looking very, very quick. So I think we are in for an interesting session and a couple of surprises for sure, I think, coming up in the session, which gets underway, as you can see, in just under 30 minutes' time. Like I said, hopefully you guys are doing well, no matter what part of the world you're from, no matter what time it is. Hopefully having the best day you could possibly be having. Of course, I am back, and thankfully, I am back to doing what I probably enjoy doing the most. So, that is obviously a great thing, and hopefully we will get a session worth remembering in 28.5 minutes' time. Now, first, before I get into the teams and how they've looked so far this weekend, and how I think they'll get on in this session, let's first get into the results of practice 3, which of course I did cover that session a couple hours ago. Let's get into the results of said session. So Sergio Perez finished top, which of course goes down very well in front of his home fans. Max Verstappen in second. Verstappen, though, could have gone quicker had he not made a mistake in the middle sector of his final lap. Lewis Hamilton third, Valtteri Bottas fourth, but the big headline is that Mercedes 6.5 to 7 tenths of a second slower than Red Bull. And by the way, that could have been worse. It really could have been worse, because if Max Verstappen had not made a mistake on his final run, then the gap could be 8 tenths of a second, 9 tenths of a second even. So Mercedes, as we'll get onto in a moment, are really not quick at all. Carlos Sainz in fifth. Ferrari, I don't think, can really compete with Mercedes and Red Bull, at least when it comes to qualifying pace. I don't think they can. But I think they most likely have the quickest midfield car. And then Tsunoda 6th, Ricciardo 7th, Gasly 8th, Leclerc 9th, Norris in 10th. Norris, by the way, will start from the back. So will Tsunoda. Stroll, Russell, most likely, and Esteban Ocon as well. And then the rest of the order: Stroll, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Vettel, Alonso, Ocon, Russell, Schumacher, Latifi, and Mazepin. Now I'm going to quickly, if I can speak English, just blow my nose, and then we'll get into the teams and how I think they'll get on in this session. Right, so there you go. So let's get into it. So, starting with Mercedes, who, of course, the last time we were here in Mexico, Mercedes won this Grand Prix. They weren't really that quick at all over a single lap, like they are right now, you have to say. Their pace was quite poor, but they came through in the end to win the race because they had good race pace and they had a very good strategy as well. They'll be praying for that, I think, tomorrow, given the pace we've currently seen from them. Not just from yesterday, but today. To be that far off in practice 3, there is no way Mercedes are reserving power levels or, are running a lot more fuel than, say, Red Bull are. There's no way they're running that much more fuel. They are genuinely much slower. Not just slower, they are much slower than Red Bull are. And Mercedes, I think, if Red Bull keep up that pace, I think the only hope for them is that a mistake is made by Perez or Verstappen. Because really, from practice 3 to qualifying, what can they really do to the car that's going to make up, say, 7 tenths of a second? What is really going to be done? I mean, yeah, they're going to be running maybe a slight bit less fuel than they were running in practice 3. Their power levels will be, of course, higher in qualifying than it would be in practice 3. But like I said, I don't think the power level would have been that far away from what they're going to be like in qualifying. I just don't see how they can make that time up. I mean, maybe in, what do you call it? Maybe in qualifying it won't be 0.7 of a second. Maybe it'll be half a second or 0.4 or even 0.3 of a second, which obviously is nowhere near as bad in terms of a gap to your rival as 0.7 of a second. But I just don't see how they can make it up. I would be very, very surprised. Given the pace we saw in practice 3, I'd be very, very surprised if Mercedes got a car, or even on the front row. Honestly, I would be that surprised, because Max and Perez, of course, this is a circuit they both love. Obviously, for Perez, it's home race. He's always performed well here as well. It's not just because of the home crowd. He also does go well around this circuit. Seems to favour his driving style. Max Verstappen, as we know, is always great at this circuit. 2016, he was on the podium here, or I think he... Was he on the podium here? Or he got a penalty, but he did actually on track finish in 3rd place. 2017, won the race, started on the front row. 2018, started on the front row, won the race. 2019, had it not been for his own immaturity, he would have started on pole position and probably won the race as well. This is Max Verstappen's track. If Max Verstappen doesn't get pole position, I think he'll be very disappointed. Saying that, if it's Perez on pole, I don't think he'll be necessarily anxious about the race tomorrow. I mean, of course, he'll be anxious to a certain extent because the Mercedes, with that extra straight line speed, will be very quick down the pit straight tomorrow. And in the slipstream at the start, they will definitely be a threat to Red Bull. But I think Verstappen is definitely the man to beat. Perez, I think Perez will probably end up being a bit close, but I think in the end, Max Verstappen will have enough in hand and will get the job done. It would be great, though. Sergio Perez did get pole position, but of course, he won't be allowed to win the race if Max Verstappen, of course, is the man right behind him in the order. For Red Bull, yeah, they're way ahead of Mercedes. And for Mercedes, I think they're probably going to be closer to whoever's behind them than the team ahead of them, which the team ahead of them, I think, will be the Red Bull team, who, by no real surprise as well, they are the quickest here. We know that Mercedes is their advantage of straight line speed because of the altitude here and the track layout doesn't really matter at all at this Grand Prix. So that's why Mercedes are just nowhere near it when it comes to having the pace for pole position. And we knew, because of that Red Bull here would be very quick, because Red Bull, aerodynamically speaking, have been, as of late, very, very strong. That's really the reason, a big reason, why they were able to get pole position and win the US Grand Prix. A Grand Prix that a lot of people thought that Mercedes and Hamilton had nailed down as their win. But Verstappen, almost in a similar way to an away team in football, in a game where the away team was not expected to come out on top, say if it's two big teams, the away team in this case did come out on top, being Max Verstappen for Red Bull, again because everyone thought, given history, that Hamilton and Mercedes were the ones to be beaten, even though, looking at it, we do have to remember that Lewis Hamilton, before the 2021 US Grand Prix, he didn't actually win the 2019 or 2018 US Grand Prix. So it was always going to be a difficult race. But like I said, given the history of Hamilton around that circuit, you still would have expected Hamilton to be right, in P1. But Max Verstappen got the job done and comes to this Grand Prix with a decently healthy lead. It can still easily be overturned, of course. His 12-point lead in the Drivers' Championship. So it's not all over. I mean, Max Verstappen is definitely, I would say at this point, the favourite to win the World Championship. And I know that's a bit crazy to hear, because I was saying for a good part of the season that I thought Lewis Hamilton was eventually somehow, some way going to come out on top. And I think after the Italian Grand Prix, well, not after the Italian Grand Prix, I thought after the Russian Grand Prix, that would eventually, start to come around in terms of the reasoning why I thought Lewis Hamilton was somehow, someway going to win the championship because he was just going to have either the team was going to have enough pace, he was going to have enough pace, enough luck possibly, and it was all going to come together for him. But the last couple Grand Prix for Hamilton and Mercedes have not really happened in the way they needed it to happen. So, yeah, Hamilton on the back foot, Verstappen definitely on the front foot, and Verstappen has to get pole and win. If he gets pole and wins the race, going into Sao Paulo, even though I think Mercedes will definitely be stronger there, not necessarily stronger than Red Bull, but stronger pace-wise than they have been so far this weekend, then Verstappen will be in such a great position going into the final 4 Grand Prix. But yeah, with Red Bull today, Red Bull I think will get the front row. I just don't really see how Mercedes can take the front row away from Red Bull in this session. It will take a great lap from one of their drivers and as well a mistake from either Perez or Verstappen. That's what it's going to have to take. It's not just going to be down to whether Hamilton and Bottas can nail a great lap. It's going to be, can they nail a great lap, and also will Verstappen or Perez make a mistake and not get enough out of the car and not, realise the full potential of the pace the Red Bull have around this circuit. That's what it's going to come down to. And I think in the end, maybe the gap won't be 7 or 8 tenths of a second, but I think Red Bull will end up with a front row lockout, and most likely Max Verstappen in pole position ahead of Sergio Perez. Now, let's go on to the midfield. First up, McLaren, of course, are in a big fight with Ferrari for 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. They are only, I believe, 4 points clear of Ferrari. And this Grand Prix is a Grand Prix where the tide could start to turn in Ferrari's favour, because looking at the circuits remaining in terms of their layout, and given how Ferrari have been pace-wise in the last couple races, you'd have to say Ferrari are the favourites to finish 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. Now, when it comes to this particular Grand Prix, Ferrari are definitely quicker. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And it's not really a surprise. We knew Ferrari would be quicker here because cars with the best aerodynamic packages that do tend to be the best teams around this circuit. And Ferrari do have more grip than McLaren do. McLaren have always had more power than Ferrari over this season. And that's what's, I think, kept McLaren, combined with their decent chassis and aero package as well. It's what, the straight line speed, it's what's kept McLaren to this point ahead of Ferrari. But I think, like I said, given the races remaining, I think Ferrari are the team for the favourite, for that 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren, of course, I think I might have said this earlier when I was reading out the practice results. Lando Norris does have a grid penalty, which of course is not good because Lando Norris has been so good for McLaren this season. They do need him to be up there helping the team effort when it comes to finishing 3rd in the championship. And also, another reason why it's a bit of a concern for them is that even though we have a very long pit straight in Mexico, because of the trajectory of the final corner and the way the final sector is as well, and how tight certain parts of the circuit are, it's not actually that easy to overtake around here. I mean, we've seen races here before. I think Sergio Perez has even had it. I think, was it 2016 where he was stuck behind a Williams for the entire race for literally every single lap? It's like I said, it's very hard to overtake here because everyone is pretty much running the same downforce level. And really, the only place to overtake is the pit straight. I mean, of course, you do have the DRS straight between turn 3 and turn 4, but it's too short, really, to make that much of a difference. You have to be literally on the exit of turn 3 within 2 or 3 tenths of a second of the car ahead to have a go. So really, the pit straight is the only place to have a go. And like I said, we've seen plenty of races here where even teams can't really find their way up the order down that pit straight. So I think Norris is probably in for a struggle tomorrow. And I think he could probably score a point, but probably not much more than that, to be honest. Because again, it is hard to overtake. And McLaren as well, not like they have a massive pace advantage compared to the midfield that they have had at times this season. They've not been that quick this weekend. And even though Daniel Ricciardo doesn't have a penalty, he's looking quick enough, Ricciardo, to be in the top 10. But I don't think Ricciardo in the end will be quick enough to be, compared to Ferrari, of course, their main rivals, I don't think they'll be quick enough really to be competing with them. And I think really Ricciardo's main rival today is probably Pierre Gasly, maybe Sebastian Vettel, because Aston Martin have actually looked pretty quick so far this weekend. And I think McLaren, they're in a bit of a struggle, and I think they're going to have a bit of a struggle in this session. And for Ferrari, even though they haven't been with both cars, say 5th and 6th, they've had, I think in practice 2, they had one car in 5th and then another car in 8th. And in practice 3, they had one car in 5th and I think another in 9th. I think both times it was Carlos Sainz up in P5. As long as both drivers get it together, Ferrari should be locking out third row. They should have the third quickest car. They've looked very good, especially in the middle sector. That's where Ferrari are at their best, which is not really a surprise because that's where really the best aero packages on the grid will show themselves in that middle sector. Also the final sector to a certain extent, but the middle sector especially is where Ferrari do their work. So yeah, the third row of the grid is where Ferrari have got to aim for. If Mercedes are really poor in this session, if they can get after Mercedes, then it would be great for them in their battle with McLaren if they could do that. But realistically, 5th and 6th is where they've got to be aiming for in this session. I think it is realistic. I wouldn't say it's a definite or it's incredibly likely because Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda, even though Tsunoda does have a penalty, forget Tsunoda, he does have a penalty. Pierre Gasly looking very quick. You never know if, the Ferrari drivers, which we have seen this season, they don't quite nail a lap in qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo could get in there. Also, like I said, Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin has looked pretty decent so far this weekend. So you never know. Ferrari could end up with just one car on, the third row of the grid. But like I said, it's the likely thing that we're going to see with Ferrari, but it's not an absolute definite. So we'll see what happens in the session for them. But they should be on the third row of the grid. Now we'll just whiz through the rest of the teams. Aston Martin have actually looked a bit better than I thought they would. I thought they would be, this weekend, really struggling to get in the top 10. But they've been, say, at worst, on the very fringes of the top 10. Sebastian Vettel in practice 2, I think, was in P9. It was looking pretty good as well in the early parts of practice 3. So I think Aston Martin, they're a team to look out for, definitely. Bit surprising, to be honest, that they've looked so good compared to what I thought they would be like this weekend. The Aston Martin looking pretty good. They've really, Aston Martin, just given up on this car since the summer break, because since the summer break, they've been really quite poor. I mean, I know they lost a load of points from the Hungarian Grand Prix because of Sebastian Vettel's disqualification. That knocked them out of the fight for 5th place in the Constructors, but they've just been really poor since the resumption of racing at Spa. Or not at Spa, at Zandvoort. There was no racing at Spa. Like I said, they've been really, really poor. I think they've really just, focusing now on next season. And we'll see if it pays off for them. But in terms of this weekend, I think a good result would be probably getting a car around 10th place. Even if it's 11th or maybe 12th at worst, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Because like I said, this isn't exactly a Grand Prix. For that car, you would mark down as a Grand Prix where they're going to be definitely looking for a good result. AlphaTauri next up, and they've looked pretty good this weekend. Now, Yuki Tsunoda does have a grid penalty, and he will be starting at the back of the grid with Stroll, Norris, Russell, and Ocon. But for Pierre Gasly, a man who has qualified in the top 6 on the grid plenty of times this season, I think definitely a top 6 here is possible. I still think Ferrari have the quicker car, but if Gasly can do what he has done so many times before and nail the lap in Q3 when it matters and possibly capitalise on Ferrari not quite being at their finest, which we have seen still this season, they've had that trouble, Ferrari, with both cars being clinical in qualifying. I think definitely it's possible. Definitely it's possible. And he's still driving Pierre at a very, very high level. We have to remember that. I mean, I think was it the Turkish Grand Prix? He was very, very quick. And that was only a couple races ago. I mean, he wasn't that quick in the US Grand Prix, and then, of course, had his retirement. But he's been pretty quick all season long, and I think you will see, for sure, him in the top, probably 8 on the grid at the absolute worst. Now, for Alpine, I know Alpine, with both cars, were not that quick in practice 3, or even practice 2. But if you go back and watch the session and see, I think one of Alonso's laps where we went on board with him, up until the final sector, he was on for setting a very good time. He was only half a second off Verstappen after the first 2 sectors. So, I mean, he probably would have gone up into 7th or 8th place. So, even though they were low down in that session, do not for one moment think that they are, completely out of it and are shit slow and they're not going to be anywhere near the action this weekend, because they will be. They absolutely will be. And Fernando Alonso certainly will be. So do not think for one moment that this team are nowhere near it. I don't think they're as quick as AlphaTauri, but of course that is a big thing because they are the main rivals in the constructors for 5th place. And if they can get 5th place out of this season that's been... I mean, even though they've had the race win Alpine, it's not been as good of a season as they really would have wanted. The pace of the car at times has been good, but most of the season it's been nowhere near good enough compared to last season where they were so good and have really took a step back in the power unit side of things. So, yeah, Alpine, a 5th place finish in the constructors would be a great salvation, considering this season they've really been not that great at all. And I think in this session, don't be surprised if Fernando Alonso gets in the top 10, because I think he definitely, if he nails the lap, doesn't make a mistake like he did in the final sector in practice 3, if he doesn't make that mistake again, I think a top 10 is on. Possibly maybe an 8th or a 9th in qualifying today. Next up, Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo, I think, will benefit massively from there being grid penalties for Russell, Norris, Ocon, Stroll, and Tsunoda. So the final 5 positions are going to be for those 5 that I've just mentioned. Then, of course, in 15th and, not 15th or 16th, 14th and 15th, you're going to have the 2 Haas's. And then probably Nicholas Latifi in 13th place. Meaning that most likely the lowest starting grid position Alfa Romeo can have is 11th and 12th, which is pretty good because we've seen so many times this season Alfa Romeo have good race pace but start too far back. And in this session, they don't even have to be that good and they're going to start in a pretty good grid position. But if they're even quicker than that, they might end up starting, they might end up starting the race with both cars in the top 10. And not just that, might end up starting on whatever time they want to, which of course is a massive thing for the Grand Prix. So Alfa Romeo, I think, are certainly a dark horse this weekend for a surprise result. I mean, I guess for Alfa Romeo, you can't give up completely on finishing 8th in the Constructors. I mean, I know they're 16 points behind, but if they were to get, say, 4 or 5 points from this race, it would go down to what, 10 points? And then, I mean, with the races we have left, I mean, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, given the races we've had it there in the past, there is a possibility of a crazy result that could allow Alfa Romeo to claw back the points. But I think, like I said, if they continue the pace they've had so far this weekend, you could end up seeing Alfa Romeo for the race start in a very high grid position. And then the final team we'll go through is Williams, and yeah, Russell starting at the back. And Latifi has looked, well, I wouldn't say poor. Williams have just been not quick this weekend. They've not been anywhere near as quick as they've been at earlier races this season. Not a surprise, given the layout of the circuit and the altitude as well. So yeah, Williams is not really a surprise that they're so far down and been so poor. And I guess the only positive, like I said, in relation to Alfa Romeo, for Nicholas Latifi, the lowest grid position he'll have is 13th, most likely. So if he can do any better than Alfa Romeo, then he's in for a good grid position and also be on a good strategy, most likely, as well. And of course, Haas F1 will be at the back in terms of speed. They won't start at the back. They'll start, 14th and 15th, but they'll obviously finish last with both cars. Now, let's move on to these pictures, as of course we have 2.5 minutes to go, or 3 minutes to go, until qualifying begins here in Mexico. Just want to say, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because I will be live 3 times tomorrow. Firstly for the race preview, then for the race watch along, and then shortly after the race will be the race reaction to the 2021 Mexico City Grand Prix. So don't forget to sub and hit the notifications bell for that content. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. I'm just going to quickly blow my nose and wipe it, and then we'll get into the session. As well, with 2 minutes to go, give me your final top 5 prediction for qualifying today. Who are you going for your top 5? For me, I'll go Verstappen on pole, Perez second, Hamilton third, Bottas fourth, and Carlos Sainz in 5th. That is what I'm going to go for. But if you have a different prediction, or if you just have a prediction that you want to get out there, make sure to post it right now in the live chat, and I'll make sure to read it out in the next couple of minutes or so. Right, and I am hopefully back for the time being. And yeah, we'll see what you guys have to say in the chat in a moment. Mike Post just asking in the chat, do you think Hamilton will take an engine penalty in this or the next race? I think it will be the next race. It makes sense in Brazil to take a penalty because there's a lot more straights there, and it's a lot easier to overtake in Interlagos than it is at this circuit. And he did it before, remember, in 2017. I mean, he didn't take a grid penalty on purpose. He started at the back because he crashed out in qualifying. But he, started at the back in 2017 at Interlagos and came through to finish in 4th and was actually not far off finishing on the podium. So it's possible that even if he starts at the back, he'll have a decent result. Maybe not as good as Max Verstappen, but still a decent result. And also, safety cars are quite common around Interlagos. Now, let me just get the order and all of that ready for you guys as the session starts in 40 seconds time. Let me just change that to Q1. And of course, if you are new to Formula 1, Q1 is 18 minutes long. Then Q2 is 15 minutes long. And then Q3 is 12 minutes long. Let me just get the timer ready for this first session. And like I said in practice 3, when I did the stream for that race, and let me just get the timer ready, and there you go. I think I've got it synced up just about in time, have I? No, I'm about a second out, so I'll bring it back up at the 17-minute mark. Because the first car on track on the medium compound tyre is Nicholas Latifi. We'll get on to the tyre situation in just a moment. I was just going to say that, yeah, and I said this in practice, because of the amount of cars that will be starting at the back, this session might not be that great, because you might get a couple cars not really bothering with the session. So, like I said, be warned. Hopefully, we do get a good Q1 where cars are trying to make it through to the next part of qualifying. To be honest, I think the certain teams who have got penalties, they should, because they want to be at the head of that pack of 5 cars that have got grid penalties. And there you go. So 17 minutes to go in Q1, and the only cars on track right now, Schumacher, Latifi, and Mazepin. Now, with the tyre situation, the soft tyre should be the best tyre of, the tyre of choice for qualifying, certainly in Q1 and Q3. But when we get to Q2, I'm expecting to see medium tyres absolutely everywhere, because the soft tyre in race trim is not a tyre you want to be even looking at, never mind considering seeing on your car. So, yeah, the soft tyre is not going to be a race tyre. It really isn't. It's only going to be a tyre really for Q1 and Q3. And I think in Q2, what you're likely to see is every single car going out on medium compound tyres, because the medium compound will go so much longer into the Grand Prix than the soft will. The soft will be gone after about 10 laps, if that, maybe 7 or 8. So, like I said, the medium tyre is the tyre you're going to want to be on, and that's the softest you want to be on. The hard compound tyre is probably going to be the race tyre, because everyone will be doing probably 40 plus laps on that compound in an ideal or on an ideal strategy. But like I said, the softest tyre you want to be on for the race is the medium. So when we come to Q2, the session that decides people in the top 10 what tyre they start on, they will want to be getting through on the medium. There's no way you want to start the race on the soft, because you'll be pitting after 10 laps, and then you'll have to do, if you go on to the hard, which is the only way you'll be able to do a one-stop race, you'll have to do 60 laps on the hard compound tyre and make your way through back through all the traffic. And like I said earlier, passing here in Mexico isn't the easiest thing in the world, as Kimi Raikkonen starts his first flying lap, and we now have 6 cars on circuit. By the way, if I do keep muting my microphone, it's because I do have to keep blowing my nose. Nursing a bit of a cold at the moment. And no, it is not COVID. So yeah, Kimi Raikkonen, he's done the first sector. As Mick Schumacher goes P1. Of course, he's the first man to set a time, so that's why he's P1. And then I think it's Mazepin in second position. Yes, it is. Let me just update that. So Mazepin is up into second place. And Kimi Raikkonen is just coming around the final corner now, and he will go P1 on a 1 minute 19.3, I think that was, or 19.1 actually. Kimi Raikkonen goes P1, and Alfa Romeo, like I said, are actually looking pretty good this weekend. And given the amount of grid penalties, even if they aren't that great, they'll still have a pretty good grid position heading into the Grand Prix. As lots of cars on track, but I'm unsure of who is on a flying lap and who is not. I think we've got, the only cars not on a lap right now are Raikkonen, Schumacher, and Mazepin. And also Perez, Sainz, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Gasly, Leclerc, Norris, Stroll, Vettel, Alonso, Ocon, who are all on out laps. Antonio Giovinazzi is on a lap. He's just started a lap. Nicholas Latifi came out in the medium, then came back in again. I think it's because Williams had a problem with his car in the build-up to the session. Let me just quickly research that to see what was up with Nicholas Latifi's car. Can't quite see anything at the moment in regards to Nicholas Latifi. Let me just check the Williams Twitter account to see if they've said anything. And for Williams, no, they haven't said anything in regards to that. So, yeah, so don't know what the problem was with Latifi, but he had some sort of problem that meant that there was a bit of a stress, put it that way, getting him ready for the session. Mick Schumacher, by the way, has had his lap time deleted, so I'll put him down to third briefly. As Antonio Giovinazzi sets his first time, and he goes P1, 0.3 of a second quicker than Kimi Raikkonen. And I have to say, pretty good lap times from Alfa Romeo. I mean, they're already 3.5 seconds quicker than Mazepin. And I know Mazepin's slow, but normally Alfa Romeo in qualifying aren't massively quicker than Haas. It's only normally 0.7 to a second, but they're already miles clear. As Carlos Sainz goes P1 in the Ferrari. So Sainz is up to first. Well, not for long, as Charles Leclerc goes 0.6 of a second quicker and is the first man into the 1 minute 17s. 17.9 for Charles Leclerc. Yellow flag in Sector 3 and Sector 1. Red flag. Oh, there is a car very badly damaged. Let me just get rid of that timer. It is Lance Stroll, who is going to be taking a grid penalty anyway. And I'm sure his mechanics will be thinking, well, what was the point in going out if Stroll was going to have an accident? And it's quite a bad one around the final corner. So I'm going to guess around the final corner he's had a moment applying the throttle and has gone into the barriers on the left-hand side, right next to the start-finish line. We do have a red flag. Let me just get up a message on the screen to illustrate that there is a red flag. There you go. So, red flag at the moment. And we'll see a replay in a moment of Lance Stroll. And here we go. Let's see. So, rounds the final corner, and I can already see why he had the accident. So, he was holding around the outside line. He was too far to the outside. He was going too wide. He needed to bring it a bit further back in, a bit further, closer to the apex, but he got so wide, I'm assuming because he had such cold tyres and, understeer through the final proper corner, that when he applied the power, he was too wide on a dirtier part of the circuit and then spun off. So, probably going to, it has to be, doesn't it, driver error in that situation, because if his tyres are not warmed up properly, then that's his problem. And like I said, he took the wrong line through that corner. It was just too far out to the left. He was pretty much touching the white line on the far left. And that's way too far over to the left. If you're going to be over to the left, you've only really got to be over there when you're on the curb before the white line starts as you're turning right onto the pit straight. So, yeah, it was just way too far over to the left and is out of the session, of course. So let me just update that. So Stroll down to 20th. And like I said, Lance Stroll is out of the session. And this will be a bit of a wait to just make sure the barrier's fine and to clear away the debris, even though a lot of the debris is off the circuit. So hopefully it won't take too long. But we have 10 minutes and 58 seconds to go in Q1. And the running order you see on the left-hand side is not the running order that it actually is. I haven't had time to actually look and get a good indication as to what it is. I know the top 3 positions are Leclerc, quickest, and then Vettel is second in the Aston Martin. And then Carlos Sainz is in third. Of course, Valtteri Bottas crashed near enough at that point 2 years ago, but well, actually, he crashed a bit earlier than that, but of course, last time that caused controversy, but thankfully, this time it will not cause any controversy. And yeah, it was just, as you see on the replay, just too wide coming through the corner and dirtier part of the circuit. Dirtier part of the circuit. That I think that's what led to him losing the rear and going into the barriers. I have to say, quite a poor mistake on reflection there from Lance Stroll. And it will, as the barrier has been damaged, so this will take time to fix. They'll have to weld it back on to make sure it's all stuck together. It's not going to be penetrated again and ripped apart again, of course, most importantly. So there will be a bit of a wait. And also, as Karun Chantok on Sky F1 is showing the replay, he also was struggling with a bit of a loose rear end. Again, that could be down to cold tyres. Also could be down to what I was saying, that he's just too far away, really, from the apex, and he was too far, over to the white line on the far left-hand part of the track, and was even touching it. And that's what unstabled the car, and that's what led to Stroll having his accident. But I'll just quickly blow my nose before I get on to anything else, as of course, like I said, we have a red flag. Just interesting to note, they just showed on screen the available sets of tyres that Max Verstappen has. So he has 3 new sets of softs, 2 new sets of mediums, and 2 new sets of hard tyres. Now, he hasn't set a time yet on the tyre that I don't know if he had gone out yet when Stroll had his accident. I'm not sure if he did or not. It's Red Bull trying to fix a part, I think, of the rear wing on Sergio Perez's car. But, yeah, I think what Red Bull will probably do is bang in a lap on soft tyres to get him, in the order, in the top 15 to get through to Q2. And then in Q2, probably only use 1 set of medium compound tyres. And then in Q3, use the final 2 remaining soft tyre sets to get him through, or not to get him through, but to get him pole position, which is most likely where he will be today. And then in the race, because he has 2 sets of hard tyres, the reason he has 2 sets of hard tyres left is in case of a 2-stop race, which is possible. If there is a safety car, for example, he will need probably an extra set of hard compound tyres to cover off a Mercedes pit stop under safety car conditions or anything like that. So that's why they have 2 new sets of the hard tyres. Michael Massey, the FIA race director, out on site to see over the repairing of the barrier, and now he is starting to go back, I think, to his where, you know, he's directing the session from. And now he's going back now to the scene of the accident. Just wants to make sure that the barrier is in fine condition and can withstand another heavy hit. But it does make you think, really, for Aston Martin there, what is the point? If you're going to start at the back anyway, what is the point really on going out? I mean, yeah, you could say, well, we want to get track position on the other 4, but they're not most likely going to be quicker than Norris in this session. Russell only has a 5-place penalty, so Russell will most likely start ahead of Stroll anyway. And then, you know, then you have Ocon and Tsunoda remaining. If you start 20th and Ocon is 18th and Tsunoda 19th, does it really matter if you're starting behind them? The aim at the end of the day is a point, or a, you know, even more than that, a points finish. So I don't really understand why. I don't really understand why any of them, except for Russell, of course, because Russell only has a 5-place penalty. The reason I keep saying Russell will be starting at the back with those 4 is because Williams have not been quick so far this weekend, so he will most likely start in the bottom 5 of the grid. So for, you know, Norris and then, what do you call it? Norris, Stroll, Ocon, Tsunoda. I just don't really see the point in going out when you're already going to start at the back. Just don't see the point. As, just reading the chat quick. A couple people talking about Lance Stroll in the chat. Kind of, you know, their opinions on him. I've been, with Stroll, I've been pretty impressed in the last year or so with him. I think Lance Stroll definitely is good enough to be in Formula One. I just think now we've seen over the last couple of years even more of him, and a lot more representative pace from him because he's now in a much better car than he was in at Williams. I think Lance Stroll is going to be one of those drivers, like a Nico Hülkenberg in a way, where there will be races, say half the season, where he will be capable of finishing not just in the points, but getting a great result, like a 5th or a 4th, or even better than that, a podium. There will be, you know, points in the season, in every season, where Lance Stroll will be capable of a great result. But because, and this is my biggest criticism with Stroll at the moment, because I think his qualifying pace, I think he's improved quite a bit. And I wouldn't say it's, I mean, it still could do with improvement, but I wouldn't say it's anywhere near bad, as bad rather, as it was, to the point where it needed serious work. I think it's, you know, it could still need work, but I think his pace is never going to be, when it comes to single lap qualifying, I think it's never going to be, you know, at the level of a Norris or anything like that, or a Verstappen or Hamilton, of course. It's never going to be at that level. He's always going to be a driver better for the race rather than qualifying. But I think my biggest criticism now with Stroll is that he isn't consistent enough. I think that's the biggest thing he needs to find, is consistency. Because I think he can be, maybe not yet, but I think he can be a driver that, you know, consistently performs and gets near enough the best out of his car and finishes in the points, say, most of the season. Kind of like Pierre Gasly at times. I think that's kind of what Stroll needs to aim for. But I just think at the moment, and I think this is also what cost Racing Point, of course, now Aston Martin. I think this is what cost them last season finishing in third place as Racing Point, is that Lance Stroll, yes, he had races where he was great, got on the podium, was very quick. He also had races where he was nowhere near the level required, and there were even some races where he was really bad. And the race in Portimao last season was very, very poor from Lance Stroll. And I think that's the biggest thing he needs to look for now. I mean, like we've said before, qualifying is a weakness. It's probably always going to be a weakness, so there's no point really hammering on him really anymore for it, because he's always going to be one of those drivers who is worse in qualifying than what he does in the race. But I just think he needs to be more consistent. He needs to be. Because I think it's cost Racing Point last year finishing third in the Constructors. And I think at times this season it's cost Aston Martin being closer to Alpine and AlphaTauri in the fight for fifth in the Constructors. So I think Stroll has got to improve that, because when he's on it, Stroll is very, very good. Very, very good. But when he's not, he's really not on it, and he's really just way away from the pace that he needs to have a good result. And I think really, Lance Stroll has the talent, given the car he's driving, he has the talent to be a person who scores points on a regular basis. Maybe not finish in the top 6 of Grand Prix on a regular basis, but definitely between 7th and 10th. He has the ability to be consistently finishing between 7th and 10th most times than not. But I just think at the moment he's not quite doing that. So, yeah, I think that is something that needs to be improved. I mean, he is still young. We do need to remember that. But it is something that he needs to just gradually improve in his Formula One career, is consistency. Let me just look at the chat to see if there's any other comments. Dylan, I'm on the tractor. Are they finishing Q1? Is Q1 over? No, not yet. There's a red flag for a crash from Lance Stroll. And we still have half the session remaining, so still plenty of time to go. Another comment. We2 says, trouble is he's been thrown into F1 too early to learn consistency. If he had had some more experience in F2, he'd be a better, more consistent driver in F1. Yeah. And I think, yeah, people will make the argument, well, you know, it's not like his first year was, you know, terrible. He did finish on the podium in Baku, even though the only real reason he finished on the podium was because he didn't crash and kept up some decent pace. It's not like he made his, you know, he absolutely made that third place his. If you look at that season, he was, for most of the season, he was really poor. Because Felipe Massa was, for half the season at least, in the top 10 with that Williams car. I remember Williams that season were, I think, top 5 in the Constructors. They finished in P5. So it's not like the Williams car was as poor as it was the following season in 2018, where Stroll should be given a pass because, yeah, that car was really quite. It was something, put it that way. That Williams car, but I just think in relation to that comment there, yeah, he was thrown in too early. But the thing is, would he be in as good a position he is now if he wasn't thrown in as early as he was? Because if he had not gone to Williams in 2017 and had done a season of F2 in 2017 where he would have been up against Charles Leclerc, he probably Well, no, he wouldn't have beaten Charles Leclerc that season, and I don't think he would have then got promoted into Formula One based off of what he did in F2. I mean, maybe he would have, but it's hard to say. But I think even though, yes, from his standpoint, from a pure driving standpoint, he probably would have been better off doing F2 in 2017 and maybe 2018 as well, instead of just going straight into Formula One from Euro F3. I'm not sure he would be in as good a position now as he is if he had, gone through F2 for a couple of years and then come into Formula One. Because what would have most likely happened is, let's say in 2017, he races in F2, finishes second or third in the championship, but still gets promoted to Williams in 2018. His dad probably wouldn't have had the influence in Formula One that he already had by 2018 to be, buying a team, which is what he did. So I don't think that would have happened. So he probably wouldn't have found himself racing for what was Racing Point, later Aston Martin. So what he probably would have had is a couple years, maybe 3 years at Williams, where he would have been racing at the back of the field. And then maybe, let's say he leaves Williams and then goes and joins another team. That another team probably wouldn't have been that much better than Williams. There's even an argument to be made that if he, say, joined Williams in 2018 and raced with them for 2 or 3 years, you could argue that he would have not been on the grid after, say, the end of 2019. So it's a catch-22 is what I'm trying to say. Because like I said, if he'd done a year or two in F2 instead of coming into Formula One, he'd probably now be in a worse car and a worse team for it. But because he was able, at least for one season, to experience Williams being good, and that allowed him also to be a year closer to the end of his contract at Williams, when they did start to really put in some just awful performances, it allowed him then, and allowed his dad, to find a way out. So, like I said, catch-22. But I think, like you said, he's had to learn consistency. But I think you can learn it, and it does get better, with age. I mean, there's plenty of drivers on the grid now who, over the years have got more consistent. Carlos Sainz, for example. Carlos Sainz used to be quite inconsistent. There would be races where Carlos would be great. There'd be races where Carlos would be absolutely terrible, given his potential. But now, most of the time, at the very least, Carlos Sainz is performing to his potential. It does get better with time, but just got to wait and see. And Stroll is he's definitely more consistent now than he was in 2017 or 2018. But it just isn't quite enough yet, I think, with Stroll to be, say, at the level that his team needs him to be at if the team are going to succeed as well. By the way, we've just been given a message on the TV broadcast that in 4 minutes' time, the session will resume. So the session will restart in 4.5 minutes' time. Let me see if there's any other comments here in the chat. Brabham Oz says, Chaz, Yuki gets a 2023 seat. I don't know if that's a question or a statement, and I don't also know what team you're talking about. Are you talking about AlphaTauri? Are you talking about Red Bull? Are you talking about Aston Martin? I don't know. Let me know, though. If you're talking about Red Bull, I'm going to disagree on that. The reason I'm going to disagree on that is because I still think Yuki Tsunoda has a long way to go before he can get a seat at Red Bull. I think there's a long way to go. I think he's also another one who he needs to improve his consistency. I mean, he has been, in the last 2 or 3 races, he's actually been pretty good as Yuki Tsunoda, but he needs to keep that up on a mostly, consistent basis. I mean, he's not going to be, I think, Yuki Tsunoda. He's never going to be one of those drivers that is every single Grand Prix like a Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. He's not going to be every single Grand Prix performing at a great level. But I think he's also someone who needs to improve his consistency a lot more than what it is now. And also, if you look at the competition for that seat, possibly, he's really nowhere near at the moment. He's nowhere near as good as other drivers, I think, at the moment. In competing for that seat, whether it be Perez, of course, Verstappen, Gasly. So, and a red flag incident involving Kimi Räikkönen will be investigated after the session, by the way. That's interesting to see. I think with Tsunoda, I would be very surprised if Yuki Tsunoda ever is in a top car. I'd be very surprised. But that's only based on what I've seen from him so far. If he next year does what Gasly did in 2020 and ends up having a great season and even winning a race, then, of course, my opinions would be different. Bravamos says he's talking about any team, not just Red Bull. I'm not sure if he'll be on the grid for 2023. I'm not sure. It depends mostly on him, whether he shows next season enough speed. And like I said, most importantly, consistency for AlphaTauri and Red Bull to be like, yeah, we want to keep this guy around because he is a vital part of the team. It's going to come down to him. As Kimi Räikkönen, yeah, he's going to get a penalty for that. Yeah, he'll definitely get a penalty for that. So Kimi Räikkönen, when the red flags came out, he had just missed the pit entry line. So he crossed over the curb into the pit entry, then crossed back over onto the track. So that surely will be a penalty for Kimi Räikkönen. As the session will be back underway in about 45 seconds time. And we've got pretty much everyone is going to be waiting to get back out on track here. And before they do, I'm just going to quickly blow my nose and wipe it before we get back underway again. And we're just waiting for the final 10 seconds here. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are back underway here, Q1 in Mexico. I'll get the timer back up, by the way, in just a moment. As plenty of cars racing on the exit of the pit lane. And remember, we've only got 7 lap times on the board. So plenty of these teams need to get a lap time set because they've only got 10.5 minutes. And normally they'd like to do 3 or 4 laps, I think. As Carlos Sainz is coming out of the pits, he's letting people through. Has he got a problem? Yeah, he does. He's in neutral. Carlos Sainz has a problem. And I think now he's in first gear. Is Carlos Sainz. He was in neutral on the exit of the pit lane. Has Sainz got a terminal issue? Be very, very big development in the battle for third in the constructors. If that is the case, will he pull over? And he's put it into neutral again. And yet, there is a problem with Carlos Sainz's car. I've also missed the syncing up point for the timer. I'll do it in about 40 seconds' time. And now Carlos Sainz. Now it looks as though he's reset something on that car and is now back underway. So I'll look on Twitter in a moment to see what the problem was exactly. And Lewis Hamilton is now coming to the final part of the lap on his outlap, and Hamilton will just be hoping to set a time good enough that is good enough just for one lap to get through the second part of qualifying. And now rounds the final corner does Lewis Hamilton, and now starts his first flying run in this session. Let's see what Lewis Hamilton can do. It will be as well a good benchmark that Charles Leclerc's P1. Good benchmark there for Hamilton to see what the pace is like for Mercedes initially. And he locks the inside front going to turn 1, so that's not a good start. But Hamilton looks a lot better than on the exit of turn 3 than it looked in practice, as Hamilton is slower than Charles Leclerc in the first sector. Now into turn 5. Bottas about a tenth of a second quicker than Hamilton after the first sector alone. Bottas has actually looked quicker than Hamilton so far this weekend, so it's not really a surprise that, as Hamilton coming through the middle sector now. Pierre Gasly has just gone P1 with a good lap time of a 17.7. Yuki Tsunoda also has gone third, as Valtteri Bottas has done a purple middle sector. Saying that, he's only 0.2 of a second up on Gasly, which is not that quick, as Hamilton rounds the final corner. And Lewis Hamilton comes to the line and goes quickest, but only by just over 1.5 tenths. As Valtteri Bottas now goes quickest by 0.5 tenth, but they're not that quick compared to Gasly and Leclerc. That is a bit of a surprise, as Max Verstappen already 1/4 of a second up on Valtteri Bottas. Let me just update that Bottas is in P1. Also, I'll get out that dotted line in a moment, that as Sergio Perez now goes P1 for Red Bull, and Max Verstappen goes P1 by 6.5 tenths of a second. Beat that, he says to the rest of the field. Just need to quickly do something to my skybox before it shuts off. It's about to go into standby mode, so just hold on a moment. Oh, and there you go. So Max Verstappen is in P1. So let me just update that. Max Verstappen, like I said, 6.5 tenths clear. And Hamilton, I think, was a bit wide in... Oh, he was a bit wide everywhere in that final sector by the looks of it. Yeah, Max Verstappen currently P1. And then Sergio Perez. And I've, again, forgotten to sync the timer up. I'm so sorry, guys. You can tell I've not done this for a couple months. So I'll make sure, I promise, I will do it in a moment. Just hold on. As Lando Norris goes up to 4th place. Impressive time there for Norris. Hamilton is up to... well, he's not up to, he's down to 5th place. And then you got Leclerc 6th. And Perez continuing here on another lap for some reason. And, right, I'll sync up the timer right now. So there you go, 5 minutes to go, guys, in Q1. I'll get the dotted line out for the left-hand side of the screen so you can see who is actually in the drop zone and needing to get out. I'll do it as soon as I can. Just need to make sure the order is correct, as Valtteri Bottas is on another lap on the soft compound tyre. And his first sector is purple. Hamilton has improved his first sector. I've forgotten to put Gasly in, or back down. I need to put Perez up. There you go. So Bottas is third, and then you've got Norris fourth, Hamilton fifth, Leclerc sixth, Ricciardo seventh, and then Gasly eighth, and then you've got Giovinazzi in ninth. Bottas goes second. He's cut the gap down to a 10th. Hamilton goes third, but 0.4 of a second down on Max Verstappen. If he can't get ahead of his teammate, that is not a good omen for tomorrow's race. So it's Verstappen, Bottas, Hamilton, Perez, and then Norris, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly, Giovinazzi, and then Raikkonen is 10th, but he has a bit of a penalty possibly hanging over his head. And then you've got Tsunoda 11th, Vettel 12th, Sainz 13th, and then you've got Latifi in 14th, Mick Schumacher 15th, and then Mazepin, Russell in 17th, and then I'll leave Stroll at the bottom because he will finish at the bottom as Esteban Ocon goes up to 10th with his first lap time of the session. Fernando Alonso comes to the line, only 13th. That is a surprise. He did not, though, do a good first sector by the looks of it. So Esteban Ocon is up to 10th. Fernando Alonso up into 13th position. There you go. Now I'll get the dotted line out just to indicate where the drop zone is on screen. So there you go. So everyone below that dotted line who at the moment with 2.5 minutes to go, it is Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, Russell and Stroll. Stroll, of course, is out because he had his crash. Those are the drivers needing to get out. Most likely it will finish that way because the two Williamses and two Haases have been pretty slow this weekend compared to the rest of the field. So I wouldn't be surprised if it ended the way it looks. Plus Russell's got a 5-place penalty, so it doesn't really matter where he qualifies if he does get knocked out of the drop zone. Right, so Carlos Sainz had a problem, obviously. He had no power in first gear and rolled down the main straight extremely slowly, and then finally got his car to engage. So clearly he had a problem with the gearbox, did Carlos Sainz. But it looks as though, as he's starting now, his first real lap, you have to say, of the session, has to get it in to make sure absolutely that he does get through to the second part of qualifying. It appears that his problem has sorted itself. As Sergio Perez, I've just seen, is back up to third place. Interesting though, pretty sure Perez on that lap did not use DRS down the pit straight. So that's very interesting to see. As Sainz losing the rear end quite a bit through turn 6 and 7, or through turn 6, sorry. As Sainz now through the middle sector. And up to the middle sector point, he is only 0.4 of a second down on Max Verstappen. He's probably going to go 7th, I would say, with this lap. Is Carlos Sainz. He now comes around turn 15 and 16. Now around turn 17, where Lance Stroll, of course, crashed. And Carlos Sainz goes 5th, actually. Very good lap. 0.3 of a second away from Lewis Hamilton, but still a good lap there from Carlos Sainz. And ahead of his teammate, which he has been consistently this weekend so far, as the session is now over. Who can get out of the drop zone? Mazepin obviously can't, and he never will, as he's in 17th place. Yuki Tsunoda goes up to 5th. Latifi is in 16th place. Russell is currently doing enough to get out the drop zone, it looks like it at the moment, as Gasly goes up to second. Charles Leclerc goes up to first position. Where did that pace come from? And where did that pace come from Russell? Up into P12 in the Williams. That is a big shock. Kimi Räikkönen goes 10th in the Alpha. Antonio Giovinazzi is quite far down. I think that's because I haven't updated my order quite yet. So Bottas is first. Alonso is now in the drop zone. It's Alonso. There you go. Alonso in the drop zone. You've got Bottas. Leclerc is now second. And I think that is the conclusion. And Fernando Alonso, typical from me, commentators curse, are saying he's a man to look out for. Clearly not, because he's out in Q1 in 16th position, and Ocon was 15th. And not just 15th, he was 0.4 of a second almost quicker than Fernando Alonso. Why on earth was Alonso so slow? I don't quite understand that, but yeah, let me just do the order for Q1. So Bottas, Leclerc, as Mazepin punching himself in the head, not going to make any difference to his result. Bottas first, then Leclerc, Verstappen, Gasly, Perez, Hamilton. Tsunoda got up to 7th position there. And then I can't see the rest of the order because they've gotten rid of it on the screen, so I can't see it at the moment. But I can tell you that knocked out in Q1, it is Fernando Alonso, Nicholas Latifi, Mick Schumacher, Nikita Mazepin, and Lance Stroll, of course, after his accident at the start of Q1. As they now go to an ad break. And I might as well leave the top 15 as it is, because they're all through and it's all going to change around again in Q2. But there you go, guys. Q1 is over and done with. And we now wait for qualifying 2. And yeah, very poor performance there. I don't know, it's just not been going Alonso's way in the last couple of races. Mexico, it's not really, let's be honest, not really a track that Alonso has ever done well at. I mean, he finished in the points here in 2017, having that epic battle with Lewis Hamilton. That was more so down to a bit of carnage, I think, more than anything, in terms of him getting a points finish. And yeah, this just isn't really a track where Fernando Alonso has tended to really have good results. So you could say it's not a surprise that he's, behind Ocon, but to be knocked out in Q1, that is a big, big surprise, given his form in the last few races where Alonso was looking as though he was back to his old self. Yeah, I think definitely in what do you call it? In Brazil, he'll be a lot stronger. And hopefully Alpine will. Can't afford to be that low down in terms of their qualifying efforts for the rest of the season. Because AlphaTauri, you can see, up in the top 7 with both cars. That 5th place in the Constructors will disappear very quickly if they don't get their act together, Alpine. But I'll just get rid of this and get some other stuff ready. So there you go, Q2. That'll be that'll get underway, rather. Get ahead of myself. It'll get underway hopefully in a couple of minutes' time, and of course it is a 15-minute long session. As we now come back from the ad break. And very good crowd in Mexico. Not as many, of course, as there will be for the race tomorrow. But a good crowd nonetheless. All, of course, cheering on Sergio Perez. And now they're just doing an interview with Lance Stroll, who will probably just say the obvious, yep, my mistake, and move on. He will definitely, now that he, of course, qualified in 20th, that means he will definitely start at the back. because, of course, he didn't out-qualify anyone else who is rather taking a grid penalty for the Grand Prix. So, yeah, we'll just wait till this interview's done and then should get back underway for the session. There's still plenty of fans coming into the circuit to see the conclusion of this session. And in Q2, I'd say the likely people to be eliminated, you'd have to say Vettel, Russell, Ocon, and probably the 2 Alfa Romeos, if I was to guess who was to be knocked out in this session. But like we saw there, in that session, nobody expected Fernando Alonso to be knocked out in 16th place. So prizes definitely possible in this session, as we've already seen. And beautiful day in Mexico City. Very hot, very humid, as it normally is for this Grand Prix. And this Grand Prix always, as a Q1 pit exit incident between Russell and Latifi, investigated after the session it will be. This race, as I was going to say, it's always a race of attrition because of the heat, because of the humidity, because of the altitude, because of how hot the brakes get. Like I said, it's always a race where you're having to look after your car a lot more than you have to, for example, around, say, Sochi or the Istanbul Park track. It's a track that really does test how reliable the cars are, as the teams getting ready to get out on track, the Mercedes and Red Bull teams especially, and looks as though everybody is on a set of medium tyres. The session has already got underway, but they've not signalled on the screen that it had got underway. But we do now have cars on track, and the first man will be a Red Bull. Don't know what Red Bull it is. It's Perez in the Red Bull. And we'll get up the timer right now. There you go. And I'll get out a second dotted line to illustrate the second drop zone. So again, for anyone new, anyone in between those two, and I'll just position it better. Anyone in between those two dotted lines. So, for example, at the moment, it's Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Ocon, Russell, Vettel. If it finishes that way, at the end of the session, then those 5 will be knocked out in those 5 positions. Do bear in mind, though, that we have Norris, Tsunoda, Ocon, and Russell who have penalties. Russell has a 5-place penalty, and Ocon and Tsunoda and Norris, I think, have like 20-place penalties. But whoever qualifies at the head of those people should be starting, the highest out of those lot. And yeah, everyone so far is on the medium compound. Bottas, Leclerc, Verstappen, Gasly, Perez, Hamilton, Sainz, Norris, and Ricciardo, all out there on a set of medium tyres, as Sergio Perez starts his first run, and what he hopes to be his only run in Q2. Perez brakes heavily now for turn 1. Got to say, the front end of that Red Bull, very, very good. He was almost too close to the apex, you could argue, at turn 1. And the first sector is a 27.4. We'll see what Max Verstappen can do for the first sector in just a moment. And yeah, everybody on medium tyres. So at least there's no discrepancies through the field. Sergio Perez, his first sector time has been beaten, but only by about 0.03 of a second is the difference between Perez and Verstappen's first sector times. As Perez, 57.0 so far for this lap. We'll see in about 12 seconds time what Max Verstappen can do for the middle sector. As Sergio Perez now coming into the final proper corner, which is turn 16. Now through turn 17. And Sergio Perez does a 1 minute 17.0. That is a good lap time from Sergio Perez. So Perez is up to first. Max Verstappen, I think, will go quickest with this lap. And Verstappen comes to the line. And boy, does he go quicker. Half a second quicker by Max Verstappen. Brilliant lap there. Verstappen first, Perez second, Sainz third. Sainz, though, has set a very poor first attempt. He's almost 2 seconds slower than Max Verstappen as Charles Leclerc goes up into second place. Bottas now goes second. Bottas is up to second. Now Lewis Hamilton up to second, and Hamilton only 0.016 of a second behind Max Verstappen. Have Mercedes finally shown their real hand, or is that just a great lap from Lewis Hamilton? Hard to know. But Hamilton is up to second with Bottas third, and then you've got Charles Leclerc in fourth with Sergio Perez in fifth. And then the rest of the order I'll do in just a moment once they cut back from this replay. Great to see you, Chaz and chat. Thank you, Penguin Ed. And by the way, anyone who's giving me well wishes and all of that, really thank you a lot. It means a lot. So Perez fifth, and then you've got Daniel Ricciardo in sixth place. If I could just update that correctly. There you go, Ricciardo in sixth, and then Gasly in seventh. Kimi Räikkönen, if I could do the order properly, Kimi Räikkönen is in eighth place at the moment, which is a very, very good result so far. So, Räikkönen 8th, and then you've got Sainz in 9th, Giovinazzi is 10th, and then Russell is in 11th place, with Vettel in 12th, and Norris 13th. And then the only other two who have not set a time at the moment, I mean, technically Vettel and Norris have also not set a time because they're about 15-20 seconds off the pace. But officially, the only drivers not to set a time is Tsunoda and Ocon, as Norris does now do a proper lap and goes up to 8th place in the McLaren. So Norris is up to 8th. Esteban Ocon at the moment not doing enough to get into the third part of qualifying. Probably will end up P12 with this lap, splitting Giovinazzi and Russell. And he's on the soft tyre as well. And there you go, P12. Just shows you, I think, one, the soft tyre is not that great, but also, actually, the soft tyre is very good. There's Yuki Tsunoda, at least, because he's gone all the way up to third position, has Yuki Tsunoda. So Tsunoda up to third, and even though he has a grid penalty, that is a great lap from him, only 0.2 of a second off the pace. And you've got Carlos Sainz has now gone up to P8. Gasly does another lap, but does not improve. Charles Leclerc does another lap, but he does not improve. Valtteri Bottas does another lap, but he does improve his lap time, but it does not improve his position. So let me just do the order. So Ocon is 13th, Russell 14th, Vettel 15th. Vettel has now done a lap time, but it is still the slowest out of the 15. So with 7 minutes to go, currently in the drop zone, the two Alfa Romeos of Räikkönen and Giovinazzi, and then Ocon 13th, Russell 14th, and Vettel in 15th. That's the five I said who would be likely to be dropped out of this session. And given the pace difference at the moment, you'd have to say between Räikkönen all the way to Gasly, who is in 9th, you'd have to say that is likely to be the case at the end of Q2 as well. But the biggest thing to note is Lewis Hamilton. Like I said, was that a great lap from Hamilton? and a not so great lap from Max? Was it Mercedes finally showing how quick they are? Do Red Bull have a lot more to show? Hard to say. Hard to say. I do think Mercedes will be better on the harder compounds of tyres, so I do think that helps Mercedes, doing these times on the medium. I do think that helps them compared to the soft tyre, because I think the soft tyre, Mercedes will always be weaker on that tyre, because they've always really, since the hybrid era began, Mercedes have always been stronger on the more durable, harder compound of tyre. When Red Bull have been able to make softer compounds last longer, normally because Red Bull tend to build their car around the aerodynamic package, and to, make that have its, how do I describe it? To make sure that the aerodynamics, they can get the most out of that area of the car as possible. So that's normally why Red Bull are able to make tyres last longer, because of course if you have more grip it does help. And now we just sit and wait to see when the cars will come back out on the circuit. According to AWS, I don't quite know where they get the data from, but Max Verstappen apparently is 0.01 of a second quicker in the braking zone of turn 16, which is the it's that little right-hander after that very slow left-hander in the stadium. It's not the turn 17, which is the corner, the final proper corner. But it's an important corner to a certain extent. And let me just hide that person in the chat. There you go. As who is this? Carlos Sainz has come back out onto track with 4 minutes to go in Q2, and he's on the medium compound tyre. And the next car is a Red Bull of Sergio Perez, again on a medium set. The reason, a lot of the reason why a lot of the teams, not just Max Verstappen, as I was describing earlier, have saved 2 sets of mediums, is so, if needs be, they can go for another run at the end of Q2 to make sure of their top 10 starting position for the Grand Prix. I'd be very surprised, by the way, if Yuki Tsunoda came back out, because, I mean, he's done his best time on the soft, and I don't think AlphaTauri will want to start on that tyre, so I don't think he'll come out again, to be honest. And Max Verstappen has come out on the soft tyre. Now, I'm going to assume, probably correctly, that he's just trying to get an eye in for the first run of Q3, and that he'll probably back off in the final sector of his lap here to make sure that his fastest time is on the medium. Because there's no way you'd want to be starting the race on that tyre. There's no way at all you'd want to be doing that. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if that was the case, I have to say. As Carlos Sainz on the medium compound tyre now starts his final run, should be final run of Q2. He's currently in P8. He's probably going to make it through, even though he's not done that great of a lap so far in this session. But let's see what he can do to improve. And Carlos Sainz now comes up, and, well, no, his first sector time is way off. So I'm going to assume this is just a warm-up lap for the real deal. So we've got Perez and Norris, and I think Max Verstappen as well on a lap. And yeah, here comes Lando Norris on the medium compound tyre. Needs to improve his time just to make sure that he gets into the top 10. And Norris opens the DRS. And Norris now comes up to the first sector time beam. About 0.04 of a second slower than Max Verstappen. Pretty good first sector. And through turn 6. Vettel has not done a good first sector. He's already 0.25 of a second down on Norris after the first sector. So Vettel will not, unfortunately for him and Aston Martin, Sebastian Vettel will not be making it through. As Norris only 0.5 a second down on Max through the first 2 sectors. So he'll probably... I don't think he'll get much higher than his position at the moment, to be honest. Maybe 1 or 2 at most. Comes to the line, Norris. And yeah, he stays in 10th. I was kind of thinking he was going to stay in 10th because he lost quite a bit of time in that middle sector. As Sebastian Vettel now comes to the line and goes P11. But of course, that will not be enough for him to get into Q3. So Sebastian Vettel, it looks as though, and he is out of the session. Lewis Hamilton goes even quicker on a set of mediums. He is now P1 by 9 thousandths of a second compared to Max Verstappen. Pierre Gasly shoots up to 5th place. Gasly solidifies his place in Q3. Yellow flag is sector 3 and it's an Alfa Romeo. Can he get going? He needs to get going for other people. And he does, thankfully. Well, it's not going to save Charles Leclerc's lap, I think, or whoever's lap that was. Oh no, it's Carlos Sainz's lap. And that's probably going to finish the way it is, or is it? Because here comes Russell. Russell, though, only is 0.5 a second down on Norris after the first 2 sectors, and Norris is the man he needs to be quicker than to get into Q3. Russell, he might go 13th, but that's not great, really. It's all he needs, put it that way. And Russell, 13th. So Russell, with the grid penalties, I mean, they're clapping him, so I'm guessing his starting position won't actually be that bad. So it's not too bad then, but I think he would have been hoping for more, given that he was on the soft compound tyres. Giovinazzi is a replay, and he must have just locked up the rear end, or maybe a problem with the gearbox, I don't know, but locked the rear end, sent the car spinning and into the barriers at turn 13, but he got going again because it was only a lightish brush. But Q2, guys, is over and knocked out in Q2. Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, George Russell, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Esteban Ocon. Meaning that in the top 10 for the shootout, it is Hamilton, Verstappen, Tsunoda, Bottas, Gasly, Leclerc, Perez, Ricciardo, Sainz, and Norris. 2 Red Bulls, 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, and 2 AlphaTauris. And you'd have to say, given this season, that those 5 teams are the 5 quickest teams in 2021. And even though AlphaTauri are not 5th in the Constructors, given the pace they're showing at the moment, they're looking very likely to finish 5th in the Constructors this season. And I hope they get it, AlphaTauri, because they've been trying really hard for 2 years to get 5th in the Constructors, and they should have got it in 2019. They really should have got it then, but they just didn't quite have the results at the start of the season to combine with the results at the end of the season to get it. But I really hope they do get it, because they do deserve it. Do AlphaTauri. They've been quicker. I know Alpine have had a race win, but AlphaTauri have been quicker this season and have been overall just better. And I think their drivers also have, in the second half of the season, been performing a bit better than Alpine's, to be honest. But Q3, which for anyone new watching is a 12-minute session, will be underway in, hopefully, 2 or 3 minutes from now. Guys, let me know in the live chat right now, who do you think will finish on pole position? Let me know right now. And give me, if you can, your top 5 qualifying prediction here for Q3. I'm still going with what I with what I said earlier, Verstappen from Perez, Hamilton, Bottas, Sainz, that's what my top 5 I think will be in this session. So, yeah, that's what I'm going for. Let me know in the chat whether you do agree or disagree, and we'll see what, of course, happens in the final 12 minutes of qualifying. As Sky F1 come back from the ad break. Hopefully not too long now to wait. And they're just showing the pit lane incident between Russell and Latifi. I don't really see that much wrong with it. From what I can see. Is it them overtaking in the slow lane or something? Or pushing the drivers out on track? I don't know. Or outside the white line? I don't know. But I don't really see that much wrong with that, to be honest. But as well, before we get underway for Q3, just want to say, don't forget to subscribe if you are new for more content like this, because I will be live 3 times tomorrow. The race preview firstly, then the race watch along, then the race reaction stream. The race preview, guys, will be at 4 PM UK time. And I'll be live for, what, an hour? Something like that. Race watch along will be from 6:30 PM UK time till about 8:45 PM UK time. And then the race reaction will be as soon as I get it ready after the race has finished. So, like I said, if you want to be keeping up with that content, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. They're showing further replays on Sky F1 of that pit lane entry incident between the 2 Williamses and the 2 Haases. And that was, of course, the the resumption of the session midway through Q1. But now we come to the most important part of the session, Q3, and I think what I'm most curious to see in the first run is Lewis Hamilton genuinely as quick as Verstappen as he was in Q2, or is that just Red Bull holding back a bit so they can produce a big, great, wonderful lap when it actually matters? We'll have to see. I'm just going to quickly blow my nose and then I'll come back. Here you go. And session should be underway in just a moment. But yeah, that's what I'm most curious to see is Lewis Hamilton genuinely got the pace to compete for pole? It would be great if he does, because that's what we want. We want an actual fight for pole position, not right, well, we know he's going to get pole. It's just waiting to see whether he actually factually, gets it. We don't want that. We want an actual competition, put it that way, for who gets pole position. And the session will be back underway, or the Q3 part of the session will start in about 40 seconds time. And they're just showing a replay here on Sky F1 of, I think, Pierre Gasly maybe getting held up by someone, or just, him getting a slipstream. Oh, it's they're showing a replay of Yuki Tsunoda providing a slipstream deliberately to Pierre Gasly. I'm assuming he's going to do that again at the end of Q3. And Q3 is underway right now. 12 minutes to go. Like I said in the intro to the show, this is a vital qualifying session and a vital race weekend to determine the destiny of the championship And who gets pole position here could be absolutely crucial, as Mercedes prepare to bring out Mr. Hammer Time on track to possibly get this pole position, as the two McLarens and Yuki Tsunoda are the first ones on track. So is Gasly. So I think Norris and Tsunoda will be providing a tow to their teammates, because of course Norris and Tsunoda have grid penalties. There's now the two Ferraris and two Red Bulls, and I think the two Mercedes as well now head out onto circuit. The previous polls are showing on the screen, nobody so far since we came back to this track in 2015, nobody has had pole position in 2 consecutive Grand Prix here. Rosberg had pole in 2015 and Hamilton in 2016, Vettel in 2017, Ricciardo in 2018, Leclerc in 2019. So, given that, it'd have to be anyone but Leclerc. As now Max Verstappen cracks on with his outlap. And then in the middle sector, he'll have to back off quite a bit to not take too much out of his tyres to prepare himself to release the car onto his lap with the tyres in the best condition possible, as Norris is at the moment right ahead of Ricciardo, preparing himself to provide the tow, and same with Tsunoda and Gasly. As the two Mercedes are the last ones in the pack. I don't think, though, that Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes will be bothering with a tow, because, I mean, it's important here, but it's not, I don't think it's enough to make the difference, really, because it's not like it carries you on for the whole lap. The most important parts of the circuit here are the middle and final sector, where you don't want a car ahead of you. As Verstappen now begins his first run in Q3. Bit of rear end instability in starting his lap is actually Sergio. Oh no, this is Max Verstappen. I thought it was Sergio Perez. No, it is Max Verstappen. We're looking at the TV broadcast, going 340 just about kilometers an hour down the pit straight, as Perez passes Tsunoda, who of course has done his job for the time being. And Perez has done a okayish first sector. I think Gasly has done the purple first sector, or maybe Ricciardo has, because of the tow provided to by their respective teammates. As all Verstappen losing the rear end slightly on the exit of turn 6. Is he getting a bit tight behind the wheel? As Perez, 56.5 so far. That's half a second better through the middle sector than he managed before. Max Verstappen, though, slightly quicker as Daniel Ricciardo goes quickest. Actually, no, Pierre Gasly goes quicker. And then it will be Ricciardo in second. Sergio Perez now goes quickest on a 16.3. Max Verstappen comes to the line and goes quickest for the moment on a 1 minute 16.2. Valtteri Bottas to the purple first and second sector. Mercedes have, at the moment, got the pace for pole position. As Perez, let me just update that, he's up in second. And Gasly is third. Valtteri Bottas comes around the final corner to the line. And he is on provisional pole position by 3.5 tenths of a second. And Lewis Hamilton goes second. Wow. Just when you think that one team has it over the other team bounces back and shows you, no, we are top dogs here for the moment, of course, because we have one run to go in Q3. Bottas, provisional pole position from Lewis Hamilton second. Who thought after practice 3, Mercedes would have the front row going into the final run of Q3? And then you got Verstappen third, Perez fourth, Gasly fifth, and then Charles Leclerc 6th, Daniel Ricciardo 7th, Carlos Sainz is 8th, and then you got Tsunoda and Norris 9th and 10th. Of course, they provided the tow to their teammates as Norris locked up when he went for his first proper run because there was a Red Bull, I think, on the inside that distracted him. I think that might have been Max Verstappen. I don't think that will be given as a penalty or anything because I don't think Max Verstappen did anything necessarily that could have actually blocked him. And Max did lose the rear end on the exit of turn 6, but I don't think... I mean, he's 3.5 tenths away from Bottas. I don't think the 3.5 tenths was lost there. And I think, given the pace Mercedes have shown there, it's going to be tough for Red Bull to find that pace. To claw it back. Tsunoda, by the way, goes 9th. As he's now set his first proper time. He's the only car on track right now, but he is going to come back into the pits. So Team Mercedes are wheeled back in. And if Mercedes get the front row here, that is going to be massive. Absolutely massive. Because remember, even though, yes, the Red Bulls will have a slipstream advantage down to turn 1 tomorrow, Mercedes have a much quicker car in a straight line. So if Mercedes can hold them off, if they do get the front row here, Red Bull are not going to be passing them in a straight line because Mercedes are way too quick. Way, way too quick. As we've seen, really, since the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, Mercedes and Mercedes-powered cars have been immensely quick in a straight line. And Crystal Racing saying in the chat, a great line, the sandbags have been emptied. They really have. They really, really have. But does Verstappen and Perez, do they have a response? The great thing about Q3 is just because you've done well in the first part of the session doesn't mean anything until the very end of the session and the final laps, where even if you're not in a position you were hoping for, you can still make amends in the end. As I think they're just calling the brakes. Yeah, they're just calling the brakes. The brakes get very, very hot here. Just calling the brakes on Lewis Hamilton's car. And I think Red Bull will be a bit, I don't know, a bit surprised. Maybe in a bit of shock at the pace of Mercedes because, like I said, we've not seen that all weekend. I mean, yeah, maybe they were sandbagging up until Q2, Q3, but we never even saw a hint that they were sandbagging. It looked as though Red Bull were, genuinely, properly quicker. And now all of a sudden, Mercedes have unleashed their true performance and they're all over Red Bull right now. As this title race, this fantastic, by the way, title race. I have to say, this is probably the best title race we've had since 2014, I would say. So many twists and turns, just a brilliant, brilliant title race, and it's great to see that it's not going the way we expected, which of course is the way you'd want it to be. If everything went the way we expected, it'd be boring as hell. And, well, a few years ago in Formula 1, that's how it used to be. Say 2015 or 2019, or even 2020 to a certain extent in terms of the very top of the order. As now the two McLarens, two AlphaTauris, two Ferraris, two Red Bulls, and now the two Mercedes head out onto circuit for the final run in Q3. Let's see if Mercedes can hang on to what would be the first part of a heroic rescue act. Not just for the World Championship, but also it would be a heroic revenge kind of for the US Grand Prix. A Grand Prix that, again, a lot of people, even Mercedes, expected to win. As Perez is just coming through the middle sector now. He's behind a Ferrari. He will, of course, back off by the time he gets to the end of his lap, so he doesn't get held up by the Ferrari ahead that he should be quicker than. Got to say, Perez's pace, even though Red Bull are not in the positions they want to be in, Perez's pace is really good right now. It is really good. He's only a tenth of a second away from his teammate, so you can't exactly say Sergio Perez is not lapping quick enough compared to what the potential of the car is at this current moment. So if he keeps it like that, Perez, through this final run, then you've got to say, no matter what, Perez has done well enough as a driver, and it'll be down then to whether the car ultimately was good enough. As Max Verstappen comes through the final corner and starts with a minute to go in qualifying, his final attempt. He has never got pole position in Mexico. He's had plenty of chances. 2017, he was very close. 2018, very, very close. 2019, he got it and then really cost himself it with dumb comments in the media. And now, on the fourth time of asking, is looking for a first pole position in Mexico, as Perez does a better first sector than he did previously. Max Verstappen, not as good first sector as Sergio Perez, but it is an improvement on his own first sector, as Perez has come through turn 6 already. Now so does Verstappen. Verstappen a lot better through turn 6, as Bottas has done a purple first sector. And Perez has gone straight on. And he's going to cost Max Verstappen here, I think. Is he? You'll know that I don't think there was a yellow flag. Perez and an AlphaTauri went straight on at in the middle of the S's. And I think that distracted Max Verstappen. Yeah, he's locked up at turn 13. He's 0.3 of a second down in the middle sector. And he's not improved his middle sector either. Verstappen and Red Bull have really cocked it up here. And Verstappen finishes in 3rd place. That is an absolute bottle job, you have to say, for Red Bull there on that final lap. As Valtteri Bottas rounds the final corner, can he improve his time anymore? No, he cannot, but he is still in pole position for the time being. As Lewis Hamilton comes to the line, and Hamilton ends up in 2nd, but it is the front row for Mercedes-Benz. What a brilliant result that is. And if they can, replicate that tomorrow, only with Hamilton in 1st, it could be the turning point in the World Championship. And the rest of the order, I believe, is Bottas on pole, Hamilton 2nd, Verstappen 3rd, and then Perez 4th, Gasly 5th, Carlos Sainz 6th, only 0.02 of a second ahead of Daniel Ricciardo 7th, and then Leclerc 8th, Tsunoda 9th, and Norris in 10th. What on earth happened for Red Bull? Perez, I don't know if he was distracted by the AlphaTauri ahead that went off the track at turn 13. Let's see. There was no yellow flags, and the AlphaTauri went off and kicked up some dust. So he might have made the line a bit dirtier for Perez there. Which AlphaTauri was it, though? Was it Tsunoda? Or was it Gasly? And then Verstappen, when he came through, would have been distracted and would have had probably less grip through turn 13, through, turn 11, 12 there, than he would have wanted to have, and then locked up on the inside front into turn 13. So, hard to say really where Red Bull would have ended up there, but they absolutely did not get that qualifying session right, and that is a crucial win at the moment for Mercedes. I do have to stress it is only at the moment because, of course, we have a 71-lap Grand Prix tomorrow where everything could still go the way of Red Bull, or possibly it could go the way of Mercedes. But, guys, that is it for the stream, and that is it for the session. Let me just quickly read out the final qualifying results. This is not the final grid, but I will get into that tomorrow in the race preview. So Bottas will start on pole, Hamilton 2nd, Verstappen 3rd, Perez 4th, Gasly 5th, Sainz in 6th, and Leclerc, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Norris is your top 10. Vettel 11th, Raikkonen 12th, Russell 13th, 14th is Giovinazzi, 15th Ocon, and then the rest of the order is Alonso, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, and Stroll. Those are your qualifying results, and again, thank you guys for coming along to this stream. And again, don't forget to come along tomorrow to the race preview, firstly at 4 p.m. UK time, then to the race watch along at 6:30 p.m. UK time, and then to the race reaction, which will be as soon as the race finishes. So don't forget to sub for that and hit the notifications bell. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there if you want to. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And don't forget as well to join my Discord server, link below in the description for more content like this. Also, great server that is for fellow F1 and motorsport fans. But guys, until tomorrow's 2021 Mexico City Grand Prix and a race that could decide the World Championship, it has been me, Chancer HD. Goodbye.